See if I can get this to work. That was it was a little bit too easy. Just kind of waiting for my theme music. It's not queuing up. Run through the jungle, you ignorant fool. Okay. I'm Michael Gibson. I teach visual communication design and interaction design and design research. It's kind of a mouthful. In the Department of Design in the College of Visual Arts and Design here. And the way that my career started in education, it started in Detroit after a few years of graduate school at a place called the University of Michigan. And I came out of, like a lot of designers do, I came out of a lot of professional experiences where we would critique each other's work as we were developing. It's pretty typical in a design firm. You're designing brand identity systems and magazines and packaging and more recently websites and user interface designs. And we would talk about liking things. You know, I like that. I think that color works well. And we wouldn't really explain it very well because we were designers talking to each other. We understood why we liked things and why we didn't like things. What I had to learn the hard way in Detroit, in my first teaching experience at Wayne State University, it's not okay for students not to like anything. They like things. If they like things, that means they don't know how to go deep in a conversation about a lot of, they don't know how to get into critical analysis. What it says backwards up there is it's not okay to, it's not okay to like things, it's not okay to like anything in a design classroom except for baby pandas, candy corn, and Aretha Franklin. Okay, you can like those things, you can't like anything else. Okay, students in my Detroit classrooms kept falling into this trap of, I like this, it's my favorite color. Why do you like that? Why is that your favorite color? And then what I realized is they were missing one of the most crucial aspects of the design process. We have to make things that actually work, but the crucial aspect is this: you're not designing for yourself. You're designing to try to bridge a gap between a client or an organization over here and an audience or what we call a group of users over here. What you like has nothing to do with whether or not that target audience or those users are going to be able to use what you've designed for them effectively or interpret your messaging or anything like that. Also, if you like things, I like that. I'm having fun. I've got good tunes on my headphones. I'm drawing. It's great. I've got cheese puffs over here. It's really easy to fall in love with your first ideas. And design's a process of decision making. So you've got to get past your IBD, or as my very first design director in Chicago many years ago said in between chain smoking Lucky Strikes, IBD. What? It's been done. He used to call me Young Gibson too. Young Gibson, what the hell is on your desk? We did that in 1955. It sucked then, it sucks now, but I'm going to tell you why. And that was the kicker. That's what not liking does. It gets you past that fall in love with the first idea. Why doesn't it work? How can you get to something that's more effective? The other thing that I learned in those Detroit experiences, this was at Wayne State University in downtown Detroit. And a lot of the students there were first-time college students. Nobody else in their family had been to college before. And one of the things that I found that you have to teach design students, and I think a variety of college students, if they're going to have effective learning experiences, is you have to get them comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's where invention comes from. That's where creativity comes from. So you have to do this stuff. You have to embrace negative capability. You have to learn how to enjoy not knowing something. Go into that territory where you're not sure how it's going to turn out. You have to let yourself get enthralled by uncertain things. Design's not predictable. You don't know how it's going to wind up. There are no algorithms. There are no formulas. Hey, Michael, why is there duct tape in the background of your supposedly cool slide here? We'll get to that soon, okay? Actually, we'll get to it right now. Okay, so the fellow that runs, I just got back from a national conference in Minneapolis late last night. And the fellow who runs Airbnb, I want to say his name is Bebby or Gebby. I've got it in my notes somewhere, but when my eyelids stop clicking when I blink and I've slept more, I'll remember it. But not liking allows you to start where the duct tape ends. One of the things that he talked about and that I learned early on in that teaching experience in Detroit, one of the things I used to see a lot and students used to see a lot, they're driving around in beater cars, but duct tape is a really popular thing to use in Detroit to repair your car. You tape things together with it. And if duct tape is there, that means something's failed. Something's not working. So you have to look for the duct tape. And often what I had to learn and what was hard to get through to students in not liking things, we tend to like things that are perfect and that are working well or reasonably perfect. We don't like things that aren't. But if you see that duct tape on a car fender, you can actually use duct tape to repair a puncture in your tire in a lot of cases. It's got all kinds of uses. But it means something's not working. So not liking something, embracing what's ugly, what you don't like, that's where the process of design starts. So the other thing that I got in those early experiences in Detroit, my students would say, well, these assignment parameters are kind of boring. I don't know. And one of the things I had to learn in those experiences that, and this is an old line from a teacher of mine named Richard Mattson from many years ago, and his line was, nothing in the world is boring. Boring is the curse of the unimaginative, and by the way, you're in design school and you don't get to be that way. So design also requires that you use both halves of your brain. You've got to make connections between the left and the right halves and work between them. So if your liking's too comfortable, if you're liking things, if you like things too much, what you really like now, like that song that you really like now, you're not going to like it a month from now. And so and it starts to get boring. So when you're bored, there's another great line, boring people are easily bored. Bored people tend to be boring. You've got to use your imagination. It always strikes me on airplanes how few people read anymore. And it was actually, it's not me that brought that up, it was a student of mine in that same Detroit classroom. And that was a long time ago. It was in the 90s. People were looking for entertainment. So the other thing that not liking things, and this is something that design students have a hard time learning, we have this sort of comfort zone that we're in. Hey, we're the people that know how to make stuff look cool. Yes, we do. But that's the floor rather than the ceiling of what we do. So if you don't like things, if you start to analyze things, I don't like that because, I think that's ugly because, I think it's beautiful because, I think that's ineffective, I don't think that's going to work for a particular group of users or an audience, then you start to shatter that perception, and all of a sudden, doors open up to you to working in areas that maybe you couldn't work in before. By the way, all these little snippets, these come out of dialogues with students. We spend 90% of the time in our classrooms engaging in scaffolded dialogue, critiquing. Our classes last 3 hours long, and they go by like a rocket. Okay, the other thing that's really important that I've learned from some of these things that students actually brought me to in those early days is they talked about, gee, I do really better if, instead of you just breaking it down into a series of simple steps, give us everything up front. Let us embrace the complexity first. If we're going to have careers we can sustain, we have to be able to design and develop complex systems that benefit lots of different kinds of people who don't always agree with each other. One of the things about those Detroit experiences, in my very first brand identity classroom, I had members of students that put students into teams. Mr. Gregg made me, or Dr. Gregg made me think about this. I didn't know it when I put those teams together. There were members from 3 different rival street gangs in those different teams. And being forced to embrace the complexity in a branding project, actually for the city of Detroit, they actually had to start to empathize with each other. And get past some of their differences. So the other thing that's really important about not liking things, if you like things too easily, you don't question them. And it's just something, again, learning over the years in lots of design classrooms, engaging in students, them teaching me way more than I'm teaching them. It forces you, if you don't like something, you have to start to figure out, well, why do other people like that? You have to, the slang that I learned actually from one of those students in Detroit who's now a design director in Toronto, a guy named Ray Page. How do you put yourself behind the eyes of someone who's very different from yourself and see things and discern things and make decisions based on those particular points of view? So it really helps you develop empathy when you start to not like things and understand why you don't like them. Okay, not liking also, one of the really important things about just sort of the worlds, plural, that students are heading into now. And again, this came out of those early days of teaching at Wayne State in Detroit. You've got to be able to sustain a career where success will depend on how well you learn to do things differently than you do now. And that came out of another young woman who'd never been to college before. And she was really, really struggling in what we call a systems class or a publication design class, dealing with real complexity. And what she kept bringing in were just sets of drawings after sets of drawings after sets of drawings where she was making one minute change. She'd change the color. She'd change a typeface on a layout. But she wasn't making sweeping changes. And finally, it was her classmates and myself. Classmates have to speak in these dialogues. It's not just us as professors. It's dialogic. That means in a 22-student classroom, everybody speaks. And when it works most effectively, everybody speaks for about the same amount of time. And it was her classmates who challenged her, why don't you try working on this upside down? What if you turn the paper over and hold it up to a window so you see everything backwards? So it was looking at something differently, framing something differently. And that became kind of a metaphor that I've carried with me in the almost 25 years since I did that. You've got to be able to, how well are you going to be able to do things differently than you do them now? This idea that what we learn in our college classrooms, we're going to do them that same way as the rest of our careers evolve. Not if you're going to sustain a career. And I would argue that's not just in design. That cuts across many disciplines. And then finally, so the other thing that I became really conscious of in those early days in Detroit was that what you're really doing if you're teaching not just design, well, for me it was design at first, but now I work with people in a variety of other disciplines. What you're really doing is you're helping people design experiences. So as you learn to develop whatever it is you're developing, making something that actually has to work, whether it's a website or a user interface design for an app, if you get beyond that a little bit, you can design experiences and services. What's a better way to get your breakfast in the morning? What's a better way to navigate your way through a parking garage? By the way, if you've ever been lost in a parking garage, that means a designer hasn't done his or her job because the signage wasn't effective enough for you to find your way in or out. So you get beyond just designing artifacts and you start to think about how are you going to make people's experiences better to improve particular aspects of their lives. So I know my story's a little different. This is my last slide. So I'm just sharing just sort of snippets of experiences that I've had with students over the years where, once again, they taught me way more than I taught them. Thanks very much.